盡千般心事，情像火灼般熱，怎笑一生一世，延續不易。負情是你的名字，錯付千般相思。
Like many of the second wave of Hong Kong's new wave films from the mid-80s to 90s, Stanley Kwan's Rouge uses nostalgia to kind of negotiate Hong Kong's past with both the complexities of modernity and the uncertainties of its future. There's a really good video essay that addresses this by Lilian Lee that I've linked in the description below, which references Natalia Hung and Ray Chow's chapters that explore Hong Kong's interest in post-colonial nostalgia during this era. I recommend watching it after this video, or even in between if you want. I won't be offended, it's fine. As well as the nostalgia theme, Rouge was part of a parallel trend in 80s Hong Kong cinema that blended romance, ghost maidens, and reincarnation subjects. An equally great film was Dream Lovers, which is about two contemporary strangers that begin to realise they're reincarnated lovers from the Qin dynasty. But unlike Dream Lovers, which focuses on the then modern Hong Kong's connections to Imperial China, Rouge addresses Hong Kong's relatively recent and distinct history as a British colony, already separated from the mainland, especially in regards to Hong Kong's rapid post-war changes that occurred in a staggeringly short period of time. Rouge is partly a tragic love story, initially set in the 1930s, between a high-class sex worker, Fleur, and the wealthy 12th Master. Fleur appears in a brothel called the Flower House in the Western District, which is one of Hong Kong's oldest districts. Due to his family not approving of their relationship, they agreed to a double suicide so they could be together in the afterlife. After taking her life, however, Fleur waits for the 12th Master in the underworld for 50 years, but he never arrives, causing her to return to the living world in the 1980s to find him, which was also the decade the Sino-British Joint Declaration Treaty was signed, cementing Hong Kong's handover from the British Empire to the People's Republic of China, triggering a wave of uncertainty amongst the people of Hong Kong. In the 1980s, Fleur asks Yun, an advertising officer for a newspaper, to post a missing persons advert for 12th Master, explaining that she will meet him at the Flower House on the 8th of March at 11 PM, the time that they committed suicide. But Fleur goes on to discover that the Flower House was actually demolished, leaving no trace of its existence. This sequence exposes an interdependence. She needs Yun to guide her through the contemporary location to find the brothel, but he needs Fleur to guide him to the disappeared historical place. Their experiences of the Western District are different. Fleur can't connect with the present version, and Yun never knew the Flower House, thus, he's disconnected with the past. Both characters and time are disjointed. As Ian Fong argues, Fleur and Yun can be read as figures hauled by modernity. In Chinese mythology, there are several realms beyond Earth, one of them being the realm of the dead, where the goddess of forgetfulness resides. It's her job to make the 5-flavoured tea of forgetfulness, which she serves to the deceased souls that are ready to be reincarnated. This magic tea wipes the soul's memories of their past life and experience in the realm of the dead. Fleur refused to drink this tea and has spent 50 years mourning for the loss of her lover in the underworld. However, she eventually finds the now aged 12th Master and realises that he betrayed their agreement. As with the vanished brothel, Fleur hoped that her lover would have remained young like herself and their love unchanged. She obviously represents the past, and how it's destined to be preyed on by the process of modernity. It should never linger. She's been discarded of, allowing Hong Kong to continue its rapid development. It's clear the modern world is too fast for her. Even the tram, Hong Kong's slowest vehicle in the 80s, is for her overwhelming. As she wanders around 1980s Hong Kong, she appears solitary and abandoned, harbouring a nostalgic sensibility that not only hinders her ability to conform to the modern pace, but her desire to even try. Neither Fleur nor modern Hong Kongers appears to be interested in forging a connection based on the other's terms. Rouge was adapted from a novel of the same title, penned by the great Hong Kong author Lilian Lee, whose other work has been adapted into some of Hong Kong's best films too. I know it might be portraying Kwan's cinematic vision, but we can read a little more into the characters if we refer to the original text. What's evident from the film alone is Fleur needs 12th Master, and Yun needs the type of love he sees from Fleur. We know he himself is a lonely lover, but the novel shows us that his girlfriend Chow is even more ghostly than Fleur. Yun says, "My girlfriend, she always worries me. Sometimes she's good to me, sometimes bad to me." His co-worker even refers to Chow as being like a loach that can't quite be caught. As Ian Fong states, Chow is too adapted to modern speed, and is cut off from both the past and the future. She exists within the moment, a fragment of time wrenched away from any type of continuity, a state of ecstasy where she's not aware of her own age or worries, so she has no real fear. This is due to the source of fear being in the future. A person who is free from the future has little to fear. Yun's loneliness is facilitated by this very scission in time and is what draws him to Fleur, despite her being unable to share this connection due to his feelings belonging to a modern condition of loneliness, one she can't relate to. Yun's modern city way of life may be economically and technologically advanced, but it's also anthropologically and culturally empty. In this sense, it creates a hole that Chaw's love can't fill. This allure is shown when she sensuously treats his injury. Her tenderness had such an impact on him, he dreamt about her that night. Fleur's tragedy almost becomes a psychological and emotional relief for him, a tragic love story Yun is exploiting to fulfill his need for a tamed and old idea of love. It seems even after life, Fleur becomes bound to the role of prostitute. The longer Fleur stays, the more she suffers. In fact, in order to see 12th Master, she shortened her next reincarnated life for 7 days in the living realm, and she's burdened to live a repetition of her previous life. Yet, Yun still encourages her to stay longer. Although he shares Fleur's loneliness, she also serves as a distraction from his dull modern life, and is even used to make Chaw jealous, to which he believes is a way to finally tame her. The reason why he's more interested in Fleur than Chaw is because she remains young and loyal to her lover even past death. She's essentially predictable, and Chaw is sporadic and unmanageable. During Fleur's time, the training of prostitutes resembled that of training a lady within the standards of the era, which could explain why Yun feels, ironically, that Fleur is more romantically loyal than a modern woman. He needs a woman like Fleur who, on the surface at least, looks vulnerable and elegant, and adopts a predominantly backseat position. Chaw becomes jealous of this, and initiates an argument with Yun, where she says, "Wife is no better than a concubine is no better than a prostitute is no better than a clandestine love affair, a clandestine one is no better than an unsuccessful one." Although her argument appears quite progressive, the fact it's fueled by jealousy suggests that she's not as modern as we thought. This jealousy assures Yun that Chaw is under his control, yet he's not satisfied, as now she's become too predictable. His paradoxical response to Chaw reflects his contradictory feelings towards modernity, which is comprised of a disdain for both change and stagnation. Despite him being a modern character, his Chinese name means eternal stability. He has a deep fear of change and likes to maintain control in situations. However, he also dislikes the dullness of stagnation. According to Ian Fong, he doesn't appreciate the beauty of speed. Speed can be frustrating, but it's in this frustration that prevents things from becoming stagnated. Modernity compromises the stability of eternal fate because it offers unlimited possibilities. Yun's narration of Fleur in the novel shows that he was trying to subdue her. However, as Fong points out again, what's eternal in modernity is ungraspable and transient. On any journey into modernity, the past is destined to be buried, but it's important not to be consumed with nostalgia as a response. The way Yun deals with both Fleur and Chaw runs the risk of idealising the past, and thus devaluing the present. something most people can probably relate to actually. Although the eternal is incompatible with modernity, Fleur can't escape it. In spite of her efforts to fight for everlasting love, she can't change her destiny as a prostitute, which is, interestingly enough, relevant to Hong Kong, as it itself is somewhat a prostituted place. By prostitute, I'm not referring to sex work in a progressive and empowering context, but in a sense where people have their autonomy taken away and are treated as an exploited commodity by agents with significant power advantages. Especially, though not solely, regarding what Ray Chow called its between colonizers experience. Officially conquered in the 1840s by the British Empire, where it was used as both a military and trading post, a collaboration between the government bureaucrats and business elites would develop, along with the illusion of a free market, to rig the economic apparatus and maintain colonial rule. In 1960, the FHKI was founded, which was a government-inspired federation that engineered Hong Kong to focus on manufacturing for Western markets. The federation summarised its vision of Hong Kong society by referring to it as Hong Kong Incorporated, a cold conceptualisation where society was compared to a business run by managers, or a prostitute dominated by their pimps. Then there was the handover in 1997, which the phrase alone suggests a type of prostitution of assets, something Cindy Wong draws back to the 1984 Joint Declaration, explaining, "The future of Hong Kong was decided by the present and future rulers, without much participation of the Hong Kong people." Hong Kong is now a cooptation of global neoliberalism and the mainland Chinese government that operates market economy to cement its political control, and the success of market economy is dependent upon the conditions dictated by the central Chinese government, a condition, Fong argues, has actually made the situation even worse, framing Hong Kong as a giant transnational corporate brothel. The Hong Kong International Film Festival's Jacob Wong echoed this concern by framing it as globalised neoliberal imperialism, where the world gleefully continues on its descent to become one global shopping mall of hopelessly mediocre products. If the market dictates value, and the market in Hong Kong has always been, and continues to be, manufactured to serve larger authoritarian imperatives, then the things people like Fleur value will almost always be out of their grasp. In the 1930s, not only was Fleur expected to be a wife of 12th Master, but his family too, who only function within the context of commodities and the exchange of value. Fleur was not valuable to his family because, unlike a virgin, as a commodity she was too exchangeable. 12th Master's family had arranged him to marry a virgin, whose name means self-cultivated and well-mannered. There's an irony to this too, as such commodity-based arranged marriages actually turn the virgin into a type of prostitute for the family. The life of 12th Master doesn't belong to him. Neither his nor his wife's value matters to the family in an ordinary sense. The arranged virgin wife could have been completely incompatible with both the 12th Master and his family, potentially resulting in all parties being miserable. The marriage market is what dictates the value of the family, not what satisfies the individual family member's human needs and sensuous pleasures. Referring to Karl Marx, Fong states, "Exchange value is mystical. It does not exist if a thing does not enter the commodity market. A thing alone can satisfy human needs and provide sensuous pleasure, but as a commodity within a market, it transcends sensuousness and renders the non-sensuous sensuous." So when she takes her own life in the 1930s, and eventually turns her back on the 1980s capitalist metropolis at the end of the film, the commodified world abandons her twice, and, given Hong Kong's fate as a prostituted city, if she were to have returned now instead of the 80s, it would have abandoned her still.